Most people believe economic collapse looks like chaos. Banks shutting overnight, markets crashing instantly, money becoming worthless in days. But history tells a very different story. Real economic collapses don't begin with panic. They begin with confidence. Confidence that debt doesn't matter. Confidence that growth is permanent. Confidence that someone, somewhere, is in control. By the time panic arrives, the collapse has already happened. Quietly, gradually, step by step. So here's the real question. If economies always collapse the same way, why does almost no one see it coming? To answer that, we need to rewind not to a single crisis, but to the origin of every modern economy. Before we talk about collapse, we need to define what an economy actually is. An economy isn't money, it isn't stock markets, it isn't GDP numbers on a screen. At its core, an economy is a promise system. People promise to work today in exchange for future value. Banks promise to safeguard money. Governments promise stability. Currencies promise purchasing power over time. As long as those promises are trusted, the system functions. But once trust begins to erode, collapse becomes inevitable. Every major economic failure in history follows this pattern. Not because people are stupid, but because incentives quietly change. Every economy starts the same way: scarcity, limited resources, limited capital, limited credit. In early stages, growth is slow but real. Production expands, savings matter, debt is used carefully. In this phase, risk is visible, failure is allowed. Capital is earned before it's spent. Discipline exists because consequences are immediate. But success plants the seed of collapse, because growth changes behavior. The rise when growth becomes the goal. As economies expand, something subtle shifts. Growth becomes expected, not earned. Governments promise higher living standards. Companies promise endless expansion. Banks promise easier access to money. Credit expands faster than productivity. Debt becomes normalized. At first, this looks like progress. Homes become affordable through mortgages. Businesses expand using loans. Governments fund projects without raising taxes. Everyone feels richer. But here's the cause and effect nobody talks about. Debt pulls future growth into the present. It creates the illusion of prosperity today by borrowing from tomorrow. And that illusion is addictive. Over time, debt grows faster than real economic output. This doesn't cause immediate collapse. Instead, it creates distortion. Asset prices rise faster than wages. Speculation replaces productivity. Financial engineering outpaces real innovation. Markets stop rewarding value creation and start rewarding leverage. This is when economies begin mistaking financial activity for real growth. GDP rises, markets surge, but the foundation weakens, and yet confidence grows. Because nothing breaks yet. Banks don't cause collapse by themselves, they accelerate it. Banks are designed to create credit. Credit expands purchasing power. Purchasing power fuels growth. But banks respond to incentives. When risk is rewarded, lending expands. When losses are socialized, leverage increases. As long as assets rise, the system looks stable. But stability becomes fragile when everything depends on prices going up. That's when economies cross a dangerous line. Here's the paradox most people miss. The more stable an economy appears, the more fragile it often becomes.
Why?
Because prolonged stability encourages excessive leverage, risk blindness, overconfidence. When downturns are delayed, they grow larger. Small corrections that once cleared bad debt are suppressed. Imbalances accumulate quietly, and policymakers step in with good intentions. When early cracks appear, authorities intervene. Interest rates are cut, liquidity is injected, regulations are relaxed. These actions work temporarily, they restore confidence. They stabilize markets. They prevent immediate pain, but they also send a powerful signal. The system will be protected. And once that belief takes hold, behavior changes permanently. Risk increases. Debt expands further. Corrections are postponed. This is the moment collapse becomes structural. Not because something breaks, but because nothing is allowed to break. With constant support, markets stop pricing risk accurately. Bad investments survive. Inefficient companies remain alive. Governments borrow without restraint. The economy becomes dependent on support. Growth no longer comes from productivity, it comes from intervention. And intervention must grow larger each time. This is not corruption, it's arithmetic. At this stage, experts insist the system is different. We have better tools now. Central banks understand markets. History won't repeat itself. These claims appear rational because they work for a while. Markets recover faster, crises seem contained. Confidence strengthens. But this confidence is built on one fragile assumption: that trust can be manufactured indefinitely. It can't. Eventually, the system changes purpose. The goal is no longer expansion, it's survival. Policies aim to prevent collapse, not create prosperity. Stability becomes more important than progress. Short-term calm replaces long-term health. This is the phase where a lapse becomes unavoidable, even if it's still invisible. Because the system has lost its ability to self. Every economy reaches a moment when delay stops working. Not because policymakers stop trying, but because the tools they rely on lose their power. This is the true breaking point. It doesn't arrive with sirens or headlines. It arrives quietly, disguised as normalcy. Interest rate cuts stop boosting growth. Stimulus creates less impact each time. Debt expands, but productivity doesn't follow. The system enters a dangerous phase economists rarely admit: diminishing returns on intervention. At this stage, the economy isn't growing, it's being maintained, and maintenance is expensive. Here's the chain reaction that leads to collapse. 1. Debt becomes too large to repay. 2. Growth slows under its own weight. 3. Authorities intervene to prevent recession. 4. Debt grows even faster. 5. Confidence becomes policy dependent. Each step reinforces the next. Eventually, policymakers face an impossible choice: allow a recession and risk systemic failure, or intervene again and weaken trust further. Most choose intervention, and that choice seals the outcome. When debt reaches unsustainable levels, collapse doesn't always come through defaults. Sometimes it comes through devaluation. Inflation becomes the silent solution. Debt stays nominally intact, but purchasing power erodes. Savings lose value. Wages lag behind prices. Living standards decline gradually. This is collapse without collapse. No dramatic event, just a slow realization that money buys less, effort yields less, and the future feels smaller. Historically, this phase lasts longer than crashes and causes more damage. This is where most people get confused. How can the economy be collapsing if markets are high? Because markets don't measure health, they measure liquidity. When money supply expands faster than real output, asset prices rise even as real living standards fall. Stocks can soar while society struggles. This divergence is not accidental, it's a symptom. Markets are prizing protection, not productivity. Economic collapse is not just financial, it's psychological. As conditions deteriorate, people lose faith in institutions. Social cohesion weakens, politics becomes polarized. People don't blame systems, they blame each other. This is when collapse moves from balance sheets into daily life. History shows this pattern clearly. Late Roman Empire, Weimar, Germany, Argentina, Venezuela, different systems, same erosion of trust. At this stage, governments introduce fixes that sound logical, but fail structurally. Price controls, debt relief, capital restrictions, excess regulation. Each fix treats symptoms, not causes. Controls reduce supply, relief encourages more debt, restrictions kill investment, regulation slows recovery. The system becomes rigid, unable to adapt. Collapse accelerates not because leaders do nothing, but because they do too much. Look around today. Debt to GDP ratios at historic highs. Productivity growth slowing globally. Asset prices disconnected from wages. Rising reliance on central bank support. These are not isolated problems. They are repeating signals. Every major collapse in history shared 3 traits. 1. Excessive debt. 2. Suppressed corrections. 3. Loss of trust. We are not at the beginning of this cycle, we are deep inside it. Modern economies collapse faster than ancient ones. Why? Because systems are tightly connected. Capital moves instantly. Information spreads globally. Confidence shifts overnight. What once took decades can now happen in years. The speed is new. The pattern is not. Economic collapse rarely looks like movies. It looks like declining opportunity, rising cost of living, increasing inequality, permanent emergency policies. People adapt until adaptation becomes exhaustion. That's when systems finally reset. 3 clear takeaways. First, economic collapse is a process, not an event. Second, the most dangerous phase is when collapse is denied, not when it's obvious. That systems don't fail because of one mistake, but because of repeated avoidance of pain. The question is not whether economies collapse. They always do. The question is how the cost is paid. Through defaults, through inflation, through lost decades of opportunity. Pain is unavoidable. Only timing and form are negotiable. If this explanation changed how you see the economy, press like it helps this message reach people who need it. Subscribe if you want serious system-level explanations, not headlines, not hype. And leave a comment. Do you think the next collapse comes suddenly, or slowly, through declining living standards? Because the answer may already be unfolding.